Good evening, everyone. I hope that you've been having a great time at LTUE. I always have a great time here. I get to see people that I don't get to see any other time of year. I really wish we were able to do this in person, but as we're doing it virtually, welcome and welcome whenever you're listening to this recorded broadcast. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about paid advertising. It's my final presentation of LTUE. And I've titled it Paid Advertising, Book Booster or Budget Buster. Now, in case you haven't seen me yet or don't know who I am, my name is Troy Lambert. I'm a freelance writer, I'm an author, I'm an editor, and I'm also the owner of a small niche publishing company. I'm also a person who did not always believe in paid advertising because for me, often they had been a budget buster because I didn't know how to actually effectively use them. And I will tell you quite honestly at this point that paid advertising can be a budget buster or a book booster. It really depends on you and your knowledge and how you apply it. Okay, and what I'm here for tonight is really to give you the knowledge that you need to apply paid advertising to your author career, to enhance it, to boost your books and boost their reach, and not to bust your budget. So I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to give you some guidelines. I'm going to show you some of the things that I do. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a resource page on my website that's going to have even more resources that will help you learn to be a good book advertiser. And I'm going to talk about the things that you need to get started. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. The first thing we're going to dive in with is definitions. It's important that we understand the right terms if we're talking about paid advertisements. So what are paid advertisements? It's anyone, any company, any service that you pay to spread the word about your book to others, usually a targeted audience who has shown interest in similar products to yours. Okay, I'm going to qualify that by saying when I say usually a targeted audience, almost without exception, you should have a targeted audience if you are running paid ads. Otherwise, you should not run them. The reason is that is the simplest way for your ads to become a budget buster. If you run your Facebook ads, for example, to just any Facebook user, very quickly you will exhaust your budget and you will not be reaching people who are necessarily even readers, let alone readers of your genre and someone who will be interested in purchasing your book. And you will go broke very quickly. So you will almost always have a targeted audience. And we will talk in just a few minutes about exactly how to find out what that audience looks like so that you can be sure that you are targeting your ads correctly. Okay. The thing I'll tell you up front is this, there is a learning curve to using paid ads. And if you're going to do it effectively, you're going to spend some time learning. Now, often we talk about marketing and advertising as if the two terms are interchangeable. And in some cases they are. But marketing generally is something you do to non-paid channels, even though it does take you time and effort. And it is often to an audience that you already have reached in one way or another. So in other words, if you are just posting something on Facebook or on your Facebook author page, or on your website or your blog, that is marketing. It is going to an audience that you already have. It may reach other audiences if you use the proper SEO and other techniques, but is primarily targeted to people that you're already around. In fact, your email list is one of your most valuable marketing tools, and it's one that takes time, but it's one of the least expensive of your marketing tools. Now, even though you're paying a service, probably if you have a big enough email list, you're paying a service to maintain those subscribers, those email subscribers, and have a platform to reach them from. That's the easiest way to do it. Then you're still paying for that, but you're not paying for the email addresses. Don't ever pay for email addresses. That's an illegal practice that will get you in all kinds of big trouble potentially. Okay, but that's marketing. Marketing is to an audience. It's organic. It's to an audience that you already have, or it's to your Facebook followers or your Facebook friends and family or whatever that may be. And it's organic. It's something that you already possess and that you can reach people outside of your circle, but it's not really guaranteed. Advertising is where you're sharing through a channel, any channel where you pay to amplify your reach and reach audiences and people outside of your circle that are a part of someone else's circle, or they are a targeted audience through an ad platform. Okay, this includes Facebook as well. If you boost a post on your Facebook page and you pay to boost it to a larger group of people, essentially that is paid advertising. You're paying to reach an audience outside of your circle. And in some cases in Facebook, you're paying to reach an audience that's inside of your circle as well. But that's another story. And this is how Facebook and Amazon and these companies, one of the ways that they make money primarily is through advertising, through paid advertising. So they do want you to do it. Okay, so where do we advertise as authors? Because there are tons of ad platforms out there. Should you take out a billboard on the side of the highway? You know, should you advertise your book on Hulu between shows that are on? Because you can do that. The answer is probably not. Now, there are three major advertisers that we use as authors right now that we know are effective, but they are effective in different ways. So there's Facebook, Amazon, and Bookbub. Okay, Bookbub, if you don't know, is a huge community of readers. The most common thing people think of when they think of Bookbub is a Bookbub featured deal. Now, Bookbub featured deals are very difficult to get, and they're pretty expensive. But when you get one, your books go out to a very specific targeted audience in their email list. The sales conversion rates for those emails are extremely high, and you will usually get hundreds, if not thousands, of sales on the day of your Bookbub featured deal. So they do pay for themselves. They almost always have a positive ROI if you get the worldwide Bookbub featured deal. They pay for themselves almost every single time. It's very rare when they don't. And they usually result in a lot of sales. And there's also a tail of sales that happens the days after your Bookbub ad too, because of how all those sales affect the Amazon algorithm. So you will continue to sell things for a number of days afterwards. And if you can build on that with another ad campaign, then you can actually reap a huge number of benefits from that. But that's not the only thing on Bookbub, because for a Bookbub featured deal, you have to be approved. They approve only a small percentage of those books that apply for those featured deals. And as I said, they're very expensive. So a lot of authors, even if they get approved, they can't necessarily afford that Bookbub featured deal at the time. Right now, for the thriller suspense genre, it's going to cost you somewhere in the $900 range when you get approved for a Bookbub featured deal. So it's not cheap. It's one of your most expensive one-time expenses for advertising that you will pay. However, a few years ago, Bookbub opened up their platform to advertising that targets their email list and also appears on their website in some cases, depending on which kind of ad package you choose. So that opened up another platform for Bookbub where you basically just pay to play type of thing. And you can choose whether you pay per click on Bookbub ads, so you pay every time someone clicks on your ad, or you pay per 1,000 impressions. It's called CPM, or cost per mil. We'll talk about it again in a little bit. And that's, you pay per 1,000 impressions. So that's what you bid on. And all ads work essentially the same way. They work on a bidding process. Whoever has the product that's the best fit for what that person is looking for, and also has the highest bid of those products that have the best fit, generally wins that ad slot. And so if you can get people to click on those ads, it's a very, very good thing. Okay. And that's Bookbub, and we'll dive into more about exactly how it works in a few minutes. The other place is Amazon. Obviously, Amazon is the largest book retailer in the world still, and it is where the majority of most indie authors' book sales come from, is from Amazon. Okay, so, and you can run Amazon ads. Whenever you look at a book on Amazon and you scroll down to the sponsored products section, that is somebody that's paying for an ad to target that book or that author or whatever the case may be, or certain keywords that are similar to that book. That's how Amazon ads work. Amazon ads, you can target by product, you can target by keyword, you can target by author. There are tons of different targeting options for Amazon ads. And with all the different categories that Amazon has available to you, it's almost assured that you can find a category that will work for you and your books. Okay, and each book is also individually different. Remember, just because someone likes one of your books doesn't mean they'll necessarily like all of them. So you have to run different kind of ad campaigns for different books. And we'll talk about that a little more when we talk about how Amazon works in a really brief overview way. Now, the last place is Facebook. Now, Facebook is fairly controversial at the moment, a lot because of privacy, a lot because of them curating only certain content and those type of concerns. So there are people that don't want to run ads on Facebook. There are also other problems with Facebook ads that we'll get to in just a minute, which include the fact that publishers, big publishers and others have woken up to the fact that Facebook ads work. And so the cost per click of Facebook ads in some categories has gone up to the point where it's very difficult to be profitable as an independent publisher if you're running Facebook ads. The other thing that has happened is with all of the political unrest at the end of last year, some people's Facebook ad accounts got shut down for no reason at all. And it was very difficult for authors to resurrect them. And I know a number of authors that literally depend upon their Facebook ads platform as a large part of their author career. That's where they advertise a lot of their books. That's where they get a lot of their traction. And so for them, this was a disaster. It literally caused their sales to go from high numbers and just tanked. And that was a huge problem for them. So there are those of us as authors who are looking for alternatives to Facebook, so that basically we don't have to run those dangers. So our business is not so tied to one particular ad platform. So that is something, we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we talk about how Facebook works and how it doesn't. But first, we're going to talk about places that don't work. Okay. Places that don't work right now is Twitter. Twitter ads for books in general do not return well. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that, is they just don't work very well at all. You can sometimes sell books organically on Twitter with the right hashtags and stuff like that. It is a great place to find followers and reading followers. It is a great place to advertise, to get traction for your blog posts with various different keywords and different hashtags and things like that. But generally, their advertising platform for fiction books specifically does not work exceptionally well. Twitter is a place where you can find readers, but their ads don't work exceptionally well for fiction books specifically and for books kind of in general. Now, LinkedIn, as many of you know, LinkedIn is more of a business social media network. It's more geared towards business people. It used to be geared towards people looking for a job. Now it's more of like a work community. So it's more of a social network than it used to be, but it still is essentially very business and work focused. Okay. So when does LinkedIn work well? Well, it works well for certain genres of nonfiction books. But other than that, LinkedIn ads are not great for books. They do not work well for fiction books at all. And they only work well for certain types of nonfiction books. So be aware of that as the type of thing that LinkedIn would love to get you advertising on their platform. And they do have a robust ad dashboard and they have some great ad options. But right now for books and for authors, it is not the best place to advertise unless you have a nonfiction book. Okay. The last place I mentioned is Google Ads. The reason I mentioned it last is because I'm going to say Google Ads don't work well for books right now. Now, it is possible that they will work for books in the future. Now, why is that? Well, Google has promised us that they are going to put more emphasis and revamp their Google Play Store, including the books area. In part because they likely want to compete with Amazon and Apple, who are the two leaders in the book space at the moment. Now, so that means that all the things we talked about, if you were in my SEO workshop earlier in the conference, or if you want to go back and watch it later, that's also fine. But those things we learned about SEO and Google Ads could all work in an author's favor if Google actually follows through with these things that they're talking about revamping the Google Play Store. Now, whether they will or not, we don't know at the moment. There are also, so let me mention before we go on any further, there are also other platforms that do work depending upon where your books are distributed and how that goes for you. Kobo has their own ad platform. It works really well. There are ads on certain blogs and certain podcasts and things like that that work well for books as well. And if you have nonfiction books in certain genres, getting those books advertised on certain book sites that are made for authors can make a huge difference to your sales. So a lot of it depends upon the book. The thing about the first three that we talked about, Facebook, Amazon, and Bookbub, the thing that all of them have in common is they have a common bidding strategy. They have common ability to target your audience very specifically, which is really important to having successful ads. And they also all have the ability to scale your ads. If something starts working, you can basically pump more money into it to make it work better for you until the point when it stops working. We'll talk about that in a few minutes when we talk about scaling. Okay. So let's get into the meat of how you're going to do these paid advertising things, because there are some steps that you're going to have to take. Now, the first one is testing. Okay, testing ads. So how do you know if an ad's working? Well, you've got to analyze what's working and what's not. And so that means looking at a number of different things. So you always start testing with small budgets. Even a $10 ad on Facebook can reveal a lot about your audience, about who's potentially buying your books, and whether the targets you've established for this ad will work or not. They also have a very robust ad dashboard, since it's designed for businesses as well, that allows you to test different graphics and different language at the same time. You can do the same thing manually through Bookbub and Amazon. Although Amazon, you don't have to test graphics. Amazon uses your book cover as the graphic, and then what you do is you test the language that goes with that. That's why I have that slash with creative. It's the creative language that goes with it. So you're going to test those things, right? Those are the things you're going to test. Now, how do you do that? Well, you set up low budget tests where you use the same language with both tests, but you use a different picture. So on your screen now, you'll see that I had one picture that was a Bookbub ad for overdoses in Olympia, and then a second one after that was a secondary ad for overdoses in Olympia with a different graphic. Now, the second one did much better than the first one for a variety of reasons. And you're constantly testing and tweaking your graphics to make them just a little bit better. They both performed differently with the exact same audience. The second one performed better. So then I took the second one and started showing it to other newer audiences, and even have since done a third one and a fourth one that have changed just slightly to see how that graphic and how it's set up, how that affects your audience. Okay, so, and which audience it reaches. Now, I've also, on Bookbub specifically, I test audience after audience after audience after audience. And I have a very specific formula for testing that audience. I'm going to tell you about a book in a few minutes when we talk about Bookbub that you should absolutely get if you're interested in advertising there, because it will help you become a better advertiser overall. Okay, but I'm constantly testing my audience there. Now, the other thing that you can test is bidding and money. Now, in the initial part of the testing phase, I always bid high. Why is that? Because I want my ad to win the auction as far as money is concerned as often as possible, so that I can accurately test graphics and my audience. The reason is, if I bid too low, then it could be the reason that I'm not getting those ads delivered and I'm not getting a lot of clicks on them is basically because I'm not bidding high enough. Well, then I really don't know if it's the graphics or the ad. So if I change the graphics and audience and keep that low bid, it may not have any impact at all. So I tend to bid high when I'm testing, and then I test that bid until the ad stops working later on to make sure that the ad is profitable. This is one of the reasons that testing, generally speaking, costs you more money, because I'm actually a lot of times bidding above the threshold that will keep my ad creative, or keep my ad profitable, but I'm doing it on purpose to win those auctions so that I'm the top bid, so that I can truly determine if my graphics and my audience are correct. And then the last thing you're going to do is track conversions. A lot of the advertising platforms will give you information about how many people clicked on your book. However, if a whole bunch of people clicked on your book, but they're not buying it, there's a couple different problems that you might have. You might have the wrong audience targeted, so you're targeting an audience that's really not interested in your book. Or you might have a problem with your book itself. The cover could be wrong. The blurb description could be wrong. Maybe you don't have enough reviews. There's any number of reasons that book cannot be selling once you're getting clicks. So if you're getting a whole bunch of clicks, but you're not getting purchases, it's time to start looking at why that might be. So you're going to track conversions, which means conversions means purchases. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to test. So how do you figure out who your audience is? Well, first of all, you're going to look at similar authors. It is unlikely, unless you are an absolutely new genre, that there are only 4 people on Amazon writing in this very, very specific niche. There are other authors that are similar to you that have written similar books. And by similar books, I simply mean that they're the same genre. They have the same type of themes, right? It's not that anybody's copying anybody else. It's just that they're similar authors. So I have some authors they sell a similar number of books to me. They're in a similar category. They're in a similar genre. So I look at those similar authors and I try to look at who their audience is. And I try to also reach their audience. And there's a number of different ways that I can do this, from targeting ads to actually doing email swaps with those authors and actually exposing my book to their audience. So there's a ton of different ways we can do that. When it comes to paid advertising, essentially, I can target other authors. Now, if I target Lee Child, that's going to be a very expensive person to target, because everybody wants to target Lee Child because he's got a huge audience, right? But unless a huge part of his audience discovers your book and loves it, the likelihood is that that's going to be very costly for you. Some of these authors on Amazon can be $2 or $3 a click. If you're selling a $2.99 book, that's not going to pay off for you. If it takes you 3 or 4 clicks to get someone to purchase your book, you paid $8 for somebody to purchase your $3 book. That is very quickly a budget buster. So you need to target authors that have smaller audiences, but that are still large enough that it has an impact, and they're similar enough to you in genre and category that you know that it's likely that their readers will like your work. Okay, it was very important that you understand the authors that are similar to you, and that you understand who their audience is as well as who your audience is, and see how those things overlap. The next one is simply genre and categories. Especially on Amazon, there are all these nitty gritty, teeny little categories. And if you've analyzed using K-lytics or anything like that at all, you'll see that within each big category that we consider romance, sci-fi, mystery, all those different things, there are literally dozens of subcategories that you can target. Now, you can target those on Amazon. You can target them through Bookbub by combining authors that write in those niche categories but have a presence on Bookbub, and also targeting that category, targeting the general category at the same time, and then it'll look for those overlapping audiences. So you can target your audience very specifically just using those things. On Amazon and on Facebook, you can also target things that readers search for. Like, what do readers type in that search bar at the top of Amazon when they're looking for their next book to read? What do they look for? What are they typing into that search bar? When you know those keywords and those searches, you can actually target them with your paid ads, specifically on Amazon and on Facebook. And then that will help you determine and narrow your audience. The more precise audience that you can reach in some ways, the better. The problem is, the more precise your audience, sometimes the more expensive every one of those clicks is that you get on your book. So you have to balance the precise audience with profitability. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Facebook more specifically here in a moment. So let's talk about how Amazon works. So what is Amazon about really? Well, Amazon is all about purchases. How does Amazon make money? They sell things. How do you make money? You sell things. They do want you to sell your books. They honestly do. The reason is because that's how they make money. So they try to lead their audience, their purchasers, and we'll talk specifically about books, but it involves everything on Amazon. They try to lead them to what they think they want. Because the ultimate for Amazon is that person makes a purchase, right? If they make a purchase, everybody makes money. The seller makes money, Amazon makes money, that type of thing, okay? Now, we talked about, in my SEO class, we talked about landing pages and how landing pages usually have a single call to action, right? So the one on your screen is basically an email landing page, and essentially an email sign-up landing page. And essentially the only things you can do is enter your first name, last name, and your email to subscribe to that email list, or you can click and close the page. That's pretty much it. Those are your only options, right? And that's the ultimate in a landing page, because it forces the reader or the person who's come to that landing page to make the decision you want them to. Landing pages on Amazon don't work that way, except for series pages. There are intentionally distractions built in there, because that way, if the person for some reason does not like your book, Amazon gives them a couple hundred other choices in some cases of books to buy. So that includes also bots. People that bought this book also bought this book. That section on your Amazon page is populated with distractions. That basically, if the person doesn't like your book, they scroll down a little bit and they go, oh, people who bought this book also bought this book. This might be one I'm interested in. And they scroll away on these things. And likelihood of it is that if you've shopped on Amazon, you have clicked on those also bots, either on an item or on a book, right? So that's a distraction, but it's an intentional distraction on Amazon's part, because if they don't buy your book, they still want them to continue to shop on Amazon and buy something. The reason the person has come to Amazon more than likely is that they are looking for something to purchase. Amazon doesn't care if that's your book that they purchase or if it's the other book that they advertise on your page that they purchase, as long as the person buys something, right? Then further down the page, you will also see a sponsored products link. The sponsored products section is people who are running Amazon ads and have chosen either the keywords that this book is about or this author specifically, or even this book specifically to target their books to be advertised with, right? And so that's another set of distractions for the user. They can click on those things. And if they click on those things, every time they click on the sponsored ad things, that person gets charged for that click, right? And then hopefully if they go to that other page, hopefully they make a purchase, but that page is filled with other distractions. The only exception to this is something that's really powerful that Amazon has right now that authors often don't use enough, and that's your series page. So if you have a series and you've listed the books in your series, you pull them all into the series, which Amazon, it used to be kind of tricky to do that, but Amazon's now given us the ability to draw books into that series page. On that series page, there are way less distractions. There are almost no distractions. And they're usually at the top, a button that allows people to buy the series all at once. I've actually had really good luck with Bookbub ads that instead of being directed to a book, they're directed to the series page with the series on sale, and people have bought the entire series with one click. And so it instantly, in the Capital City Murders series, for instance, there are 13 books out so far. So I get 13 sales instantaneously because they buy the entire series. So that's part of how Amazon works, is there you have landing pages on Amazon. Those are your book pages, your author page, your series page. Your series page is the only one without distractions. Your author page and your page for your pages for your individual books all have built-in distractions to basically drive people to make a purchase. Whether it's from you or whether it's from somebody else, people are driven to make a purchase. That's essentially how Amazon works. Now, up in the corner, right up there, you're going to see a book that's called Amazon Decoded. I'm going to highly recommend that you go and find that book if you want to advertise on Amazon, and even if you just publish on Amazon, because it gives you a great explanation of how Amazon actually works, how their algorithm works, and how you can use that algorithm to work for you. How if Amazon starts to see steady sales of your books over a number of days, Amazon then starts to advertise them for you. And that is a fantastic advantage that authors have. It also talks about visibility and some things we're not going to talk about in this particular segment about the visibility that you get in Kindle Unlimited versus the visibility you get if you're just in Amazon in general and your books are distributed widely, and so how that affects your ads and your ad budget. And if you take, there's a couple of courses I'll recommend on Amazon ads as well. One is a book called Mastering Amazon Ads. It's by Brian Meeks. Also, Brian Cohen has an Amazon ad school, and he offers some free Amazon ad challenges every couple months or so. Some of those are run on Facebook. Things like that. And that gives you a great idea of how Amazon ads work and gives you kind of some insight into how to make them profitable. And it also looks at what's the effect of being in Kindle Unlimited, being out of Kindle Unlimited, and what should be the right choice for you and your books. Okay. Now let's talk about how Bookbub works. Now, Bookbub works a little bit differently. The way Bookbub makes money is essentially off of ads. Now, Bookbub has a gigantic email list, and they have fantastic open rates and fantastic click-through rates, which is really great for advertisers. But they are very picky about what they put in those emails. That's why it's so hard to get a Bookbub featured deal. The reason is they want their readers to continue to be happy with them because they want to maintain those high open rates and those high sell-through rates, because the higher those are, the more authors like me are interested in getting a Bookbub featured deal and interested in advertising our books with Bookbub because we know they have an engaged audience. So Bookbub's goal is to lead readers digitally to what they want. In your ad campaigns, you can use authors and categories, and you can often combine those two things to very precisely target your audience, especially when you're in the testing phase. So when I do run Bookbub ad tests, I'm essentially testing to one author and usually in one market, usually the US Amazon market, because it's the toughest one. If I can get my ads to work in the US Amazon market, I know that then I can spread those ads wider to a larger audience. And so I can get more people to click through on those books, and I can get more sales. Okay. And so there's another book I'm going to recommend. It's called Bookbub Ads Expert. You should absolutely go grab it. It'll be on the resources page on my website as well. If you're interested in advertising on Bookbub, it'll give you much more in detail of exactly how to test on Bookbub and exactly how Bookbub works. But essentially, Bookbub wants to satisfy readers, the same as Amazon wants to satisfy readers by leading them to a purchase. Bookbub wants to satisfy readers and get them to click on your ad so that you as an author will continue to run ads on on Bookbub, because your ads are successful. Bookbub has a partners blog that has all kinds of tips about how to run ads on Bookbub, how to make those ads profitable, what other people in your genre have done. And they do that. They give you all that free information because they want you to continue advertising on Bookbub, because that's essentially how they make money. And it's also how they keep their readers happy. The bigger variety of books they have available and that are being advertised out there, essentially, the happier their readers are. So Bookbub is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of really narrow preciseness with the targeting, but you can get somewhat precise by combining authors and categories. But it is a great place to reach essentially a new audience, right? And it's easy to do testing on Bookbub. Bookbub is one of the easiest platforms to start with. The thing to remember is that their readers are price sensitive. You got to remember your book ad appears at the bottom of an email that has a whole bunch of bargain books in it, because they're part of the featured deal. So if your book, everybody's just saw a huge bunch of 99-cent books, and your book at the bottom is $2.99 or $4.99, that's going to be a hard sell for them. So they're very bargain sensitive. So typically, if you're going to run an ad on a book on Bookbub, you do it with a bargain book. Now, it's often I do this with a first in series that's 99 cents anyway, so you can use that consistently, things like that. And then once you've established what those audiences are, if you get people to go to your series page, a lot of times if you have the series on sale, people will buy the whole series in one shot. So it's a fantastic way to reach your audience, reach new readers, especially with bargain books that you have on sale. So you should have a marketing calendar where you rotate through the different books that you have on sale so that you can use them in these different platforms if you have a large backlist. If you don't, and you're relying on only a couple of books, you just have to be careful how you do this so you basically don't go broke selling sale books all the time. So now we're going to move on to the biggie, the elephant in the room. Okay, as large as Amazon is, and as great as their ad platform is, the holy grail for many authors is mastering Facebook ads. The reason is, if you master Facebook ads, you can literally make a living basically writing books and writing Facebook ads. Now, here's the problem. Well, let's talk about how Facebook works initially. Is Facebook has tons of information about every single one of its users. Think about every time that you download an app from the App Store, you hit the button that says log in with Facebook. Now you've given that app and Facebook permission to share information. And so from that, Facebook gets tons and tons of information about you. And most of the time it's because you give it to them, right? If you're a Facebook user. Now, and depending upon how you handle your own privacy issues, which is an entirely different discussion. So with Facebook, I can target all kinds of demographics. I can target authors, genres, categories, but I can also target age, sex, income level. I can target very precisely people that are interested in Kindle, people that are interested in Apple Books, people that are interested in audiobooks. I can narrow my audience really specifically with Facebook. Now, the narrower that audience gets, the more that clicks will cost you. most of the time with Facebook. So you do have to be aware of that. If you narrow your audience too far, it's hard to make your books profitable because it's essentially costing you too much to get someone to click on your ad. Okay, so it's not going to balance out for you. So Facebook is one of the places that can very quickly become a budget buster. Bookbub will use up whatever budget you allow them to use. If you set a $30 budget, you will spend $30. On Amazon, if you set a $5 a day budget, most of the time you will not spend $5 a day. Amazon won't use all of that because they're delivering your ads to the optimum person. So fairly often you're not losing money on that because they're not using everything that you do. However, Facebook, if you set a budget for your ad, Facebook will find a way to use every dime that you set. So this is why Facebook will often become a budget buster, because people set their initial testing, even Facebook ad bids, too high. They set their ad budgets too high, and then Facebook uses all of that without being as precise about who they're targeting as they could be. Or if you as the author have set the wrong audience, it doesn't matter whether that audience is responding or not, Facebook will continue to deliver that ad to them. So I've had people that, especially in the past, that would set their Facebook ads and kind of just go away and let them run forever. And then Facebook would be charging their card hundreds of dollars every month for ads that weren't producing any sales. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful with Facebook. Now, what's been happening with them lately? Well, first of all, with all the political unrest at the end of last year, Facebook was not only shedding users, but people's ad campaigns or ad accounts were being shut down for apparently no reason at all. And they hadn't violated any rules, but Facebook just kind of arbitrarily was shutting down ad accounts, and it was very difficult to get them to turn them back on. So for some authors who are very dependent upon Facebook ads to actually drive their business, drive the traffic to Amazon for them and drive their business, this was a disaster. It literally cost some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars if they didn't have a backup plan. And so obviously I always recommend that you have a backup plan in more than one platform. And Facebook is the hardest platform to master. So once you've got it mastered, you've got those ads dialed in. If they, for some reason, flag your ad account or shut your ad account down, then it becomes very difficult to get back into that game and get everything up and running again. So it can be extremely time consuming. It can be extremely profitable. It can be extremely time consuming and frustrating. So there are a large number of authors who have started to move away from Facebook advertising and explore other advertising categories. The other reason is that traditional publishers and those who advertise books with a lot higher dollar value have a lot more freedom with the amount of money they can throw at bids, essentially. So bidding has become more expensive. Those clicks and that cost per mil has become more expensive. And so it's harder for indie authors to make a living or to make a profit from running Facebook ads. So Facebook ads are extremely tricky. You can get your Facebook ad accounts shut down for any number of reasons, and that's rather concerning to a lot of different authors. And also just Facebook's privacy policies and the things they are continuing to advocate for have a lot of authors concerned, because if they can limit one person's language, they can limit anyone's language. And so it feels like a risk when you write things for a living, that if you potentially offend someone, you could get your account banned, shut down permanently. And if you're relying upon that ad revenue to make money, you could find yourself in real trouble. So Facebook is somewhat controversial at the moment. It is still the most precise targeting platform there is. They have a huge audience. There are literally millions of daily users, so I guarantee that your readers are on Facebook, but it's extremely difficult to master. It is extremely risky in some ways, at least at the moment with your ad campaigns. So some of us are shifting a large percentage of our marketing budget away from Facebook and to other places. Okay, really quickly, we're going to have to zoom through these last few things, but we're going to talk about scaling. Now, you only scale ads after you test. So what does scaling mean? Well, it basically means adding budget to your ad to make it go further and make it perform more. Okay. So if an ad is working, I add more budget to it and it works better. And I continue to watch it to make sure that it doesn't stop working. Right. As long as it continues to work, I can continue to add money to it and I continue to have a positive ROI and I continue to get sales from it. Okay. But you always test with small budget and then you scale what is working by adding more budget, but you only scale after testing. I have seen people try to skip this particular step. When I was talking about plotting and stuff like that earlier in the conference, I said there's not things that you can do in the wrong order and do wrong in plotting and things like that. Everybody has their own individual style. That is not true of advertising. There is no individual style and flair when it comes to advertising other than your graphics. Do things in order. Only scale after you test. If you scale an ad because you think, well, this should be doing well, but for some reason it's not, maybe I'm just not reaching enough people, and you scale it, more than likely you will reach a lot more people who still won't buy your book, and it will become a budget buster for you. So that it's very, very important that you understand that you don't scale until you have something that is working. Okay. The next part of this is you don't set and forget your ads. Okay, there are people that just set up their ads, like I was talking about. They set up their Facebook ads and they just forget them and let them run, right? At some point, even if you have targeted a good author and you have a good audience, you will saturate that audience with the number of people who are going to buy books from that group, and your ads will stop performing as well, and eventually they'll really, really decline and go down. And those things can still be costing you a ton of money. As I said, Facebook, if you give them a budget, they will use it all. Right? But even if it's not working, they will continue to use it all. So watch your cost per click and your cost per 1,000 impressions. Pay attention to what those numbers will look like. If your cost per click starts to go up, if your click-through rate starts to go down, then that means that ad is no longer working. You either need to change something about that ad so you continue running it to that audience, or you need to stop it and run it to a different audience. You also need to be watching your conversion rate all the time. If the people you are reaching are not buying your book, then you need to change that audience to find people who are going to buy your book. And so that conversion rate can go up, and you always need to watch your return on investment. Make sure that you're making more money in sales than what you're spending on ads. Otherwise, you can very quickly get upside down and you can turn what's potentially a very good thing for your books and your career into something that's very negative for you and for your budget. Okay, we do this for a reason. We have passion, but we also want to sell books and make money. Okay, so very, very important. So what do you need to get started with ads? So what you need to get started is you need three things. First of all, you need time. It's going to take you time to master ads. It is going to take you time to figure this out. It is going to take you time to create different graphics for different platforms. Now, there are tools like Canva that is a free tool that will help you with making ads for different platforms that are the right size. They have free images you can use. They have backgrounds. They have templates. I also pay for a program that's called Bookbrush. It's not free, but it's very affordable. It's only a certain amount per year, and usually they have sales on it fairly frequently. And you can easily create a number of ads using various different templates and using your own backgrounds and things like that. And you can create them very quickly for different platforms. But it does take you some time to create those graphics. It also will cost you a certain amount of money. And you can alternatively, instead of learning to make graphics on your own, you can pay someone to make those graphics for you. Often your cover designer will do that for a small fee, whatever that may be. So you can use money in that particular case to create those graphics. But you also need money for one other thing, the testing phase. The testing phase is going to cost you money. No matter how good you are at this, no matter how quickly you get it dialed in, the testing phase will cost you money. And you have to realize that while you might make a profit straight out of the gate, if you're lucky, more than likely that money you invest initially is money that you will not get back. And you need to be okay with that when you start advertising. Just realize it, reconcile it with yourself, however you need to do that, and just be sure you're not gambling on your book advertising with the mortgage money or the grocery money. Be sure that it's money that if you lose it all, it's not going to devastate you financially, that you can afford to lose it. The last thing you will need is patience. It takes time to figure out ads. It takes time to figure out how they're working and what they're working with. It takes time to create those graphics. It takes time to monitor them every single day and revise them to things that are working. So it's going to take patience. You must be willing to wait for results, and you need to be financially able to wait for those results. And remember, think about this. If you sell a whole boatload of books on Amazon this month because your ads start working, it takes you 90 days to get paid. So you're not going to get that money back right away. So that patience is absolutely key to your long-term success. Okay, your long-term success with Bookbub, with any kind of advertising, paid advertising, takes time. Okay, we're going to wrap things up I'm going to tell you there's a resources page on my website. I'll drop it in the chat, but this is exactly what it looks like. There are going to be all kinds of resources on that page. There will be books that I recommend that you get if you're going to learn to run ads. There will be articles. There will be some YouTube videos embedded. There will be a bunch of different things that you can check out that will help you determine, should I run paid ads? Where should I run them? And what will that look like for me? What I generally recommend is that you start with one place. You run ads one place, especially if you're not doing this full time. If you're not an author full time, so you don't have some of the extra time that others may have. I highly recommend that you start with one platform, master that platform, and move on from there. I recommend that your first platform, if it's going to be Facebook, that you do some research and get some help when you first start out. There are people that will help you develop a strategy for Facebook that will actually work for you. Okay? I know this has been a ton of information really fast at the end of a conference. That's why I'm kind of glad this is recorded so you can watch it again later. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. There will be a contact form on the resources page as well. But there will be a ton of different resources there that I use and I recommend personally for how to get started on running ads and how to learn more about how to master them. Now, once you take away all this information, my hope for you is that all of the paid ads you run will be book boosters and not budget busters. I'm going to open things up for questions. I'll be in the chat for a few minutes, and I'll be around for the rest of the evening for the conference. And like I say, you can always reach out to me afterwards, things like that. Check out the resources page on my website. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for coming to LTUE. I appreciate all of you more than you could possibly know. Have a great evening. Have a great rest of your conference, and we'll talk to you all soon.